In 1970, the GM Lordstown plant in Ohio set a world speed record that engineers deemed physically impossible. 101 cars per hour. Let that rhythm sink in. Every 36 seconds, a new car rolled off the assembly line. This wasn't a factory, it was a heavy machine gun, firing automobiles into the world. It was called Industrial Woodstock. The average age of a worker was just 24. These were yesterday's high schoolers and Vietnam vets, long-haired hippies, assembling America's most advanced car, the Chevrolet Vega. The plant was packed with revolutionary Unimate robots. General Motors believed it had created the factory of the future, where machines do the heavy lifting and humans just watch the buttons. But on March 6, 2019, the last Chevrolet Cruze rolled off the line, and the plant went silent forever. This happened just 2 years after President Trump, standing in a neighboring town, promised workers, "Don't sell your houses, the jobs are coming back." Instead of jobs returning, people watched their factory sold to a bankrupt startup and then simply closed. This isn't just a story about a plant closing. It's a story about how blind faith in automation, cynical politics, and corporate betrayal broke the back of the American middle class. Part 1. Origins: the import killer and robots. To understand the drama of Lordstown, we need to go back to the late 60s, to the era when Detroit first felt the cold sweat of fear. For decades, the Big Three, GM, Ford, Chrysler, lived in a comfortable world where competition didn't exist. They produced massive, gas-guzzling dreadnoughts of chrome and steel, and Americans bought them because gas cost pennies. But the world was changing. Small, strange cars began appearing on the roads of California and New York. The Toyota Corolla, the Honda Civic, the Volkswagen Beetle. They were cheap. They didn't break. And they sipped gas with a dropper, not a bucket. General Motors leadership in their high towers in Detroit laughed at first. "Americans will never get into those tin cans," they said. But when the import share crossed 10%, the laughter stopped. Panic set in. They needed an answer, a weapon of retaliation, an import killer. That answer was supposed to be the Chevrolet Vega. Project Vega, code XP887, was the personal brainchild of GM President Ed Cole. The task was ambitious and, as it turned out, fatal. Create a car that costs less than $2,000, weighs less than 2,000 pounds, and still turns a profit. Usually, a rule applies in the auto industry. Small car, small profit. To make money on a cheap car, you need to sell it in the millions and cut costs to the absolute minimum. How do you cut costs? Ed Cole decided, you need to remove the most unreliable, expensive, and finicky part from the equation, the human. Thus was born the project for the plant in Lordstown, Ohio. This place wasn't chosen by accident. It was rural backwoods, farm fields, where the old, angry union traditions of Detroit didn't exist. Here, they could start with a clean slate. The plant was built from scratch as a temple of automation. The main stars of this temple were the Unimate robots. These were the world's first industrial manipulators of such scale. 26 huge hydraulic iron hands that could weld bodies with inhuman precision. GM engineers looked at them as gods. Robots don't get sick. Robots don't go to the bathroom. Robots don't join the union. Robots don't demand a raise. They built a line designed for insane speed, 100 cars per hour. For comparison, the standard speed at factories of that time was 55 to 60 cars. They wanted to rev the conveyor almost twice as fast as was considered possible. But the robots needed operators, And here, GM applied a cynical staffing strategy. They specifically avoided hiring experienced workers with tenure. Old workers knew their worth, knew safety rules, and knew how to argue with a foreman. GM needed the young. They hired yesterday's high schoolers, farm boys, and veterans fresh out of the jungles of Vietnam. The average age of a worker in Lordstown was 24. Managers in expensive suits rubbed their hands together. They thought, this is the baby boomer generation. They love technology. They are flexible. They will be obedient. They made a mistake that would cost them billions. They failed to account for the fact that this was a generation that listened to Jimi Hendrix, grew their hair long, smoked marijuana, and, most importantly, had zero respect for authority. They didn't fear the boss like their fathers who survived the Great Depression. GM built a powder keg, stuffed it with robots, and gave matches to rebels. Part 2. The Ascent. Industrial Woodstock. 1970. The plant is launched. If you had walked onto the assembly floor at that time, you would have thought you were at a rock concert, not a manufacturing facility. The atmosphere was surreal. Instead of grim men in caps and greasy coveralls, guys with shoulder-length hair, bandanas, bell-bottom jeans, and bright t-shirts stood at the machines. Many wore army jackets with peace signs. Rock and roll blared from portable radios at full volume. Led Zeppelin, The Doors, Creedence. In the air, mixing with the smell of welding and paint, was the distinct scent of sweet marijuana smoke. The press, arriving to write about the miracle of automation, was in shock. Journalists dubbed the place Industrial Woodstock. At first, everything went magnificently. The Chevrolet Vega was a beautiful car. It looked like a shrunken Camaro, European style, low profile. Under the hood sat an innovative aluminum engine, a miracle of engineering thought, or so it seemed then. In 1971, the authoritative Motor Trend magazine named the Vega Car of the Year. Sales shot vertically upward. Dealers begged for more. America fell in love with this car. The Lordstown plant became the most productive object in the General Motors galaxy. Leadership in Detroit popped champagne. It seemed their bet had paid off. They had created a perpetual motion machine of profit. Robots weld, hippies assemble. Money flows like a river. Wages at the plant were high. Young guys from Ohio, who previously could only count on work on a farm or at a gas station, suddenly started making money like bank clerks. They bought new cars, often muscle cars, not Vegas, motorcycles, built houses. It seemed GM had managed to rejuvenate the face of the auto industry, that they had found the secret of eternal youth for an old industry. But no one listened to what these guys were saying in the smoking areas. No one saw their hands shaking after a shift. No one noticed the empty, glazed stares of operators walking out the gate. Industrial Woodstock was a facade. Behind it lay a penal colony. Part 3. Greatness. 36 Seconds of Hell. Let's break down what 101 cars per hour means. This number sounds abstract, but for a human on the line, it was physical torture. There are 3,600 seconds in an hour. Divide by 101, you get 35.6 seconds. A worker had exactly 36 seconds to complete his operation. 36 seconds to grab a heavy wheel, mount it on the studs, and tighten 5 nuts with a pneumatic gun. 36 seconds to install a windshield. 36 seconds to weld a seat bracket. And like that, 8 hours in a row. No pauses, no right to make a mistake. For comparison, at ordinary factories of that time, the pace was 55 to 60 cars per hour. A human had a minute. A minute is a luxury. In a minute, you can adjust your helmet, scratch your nose, stretch your back. In Lordstown, there was no time. You turned into a bio-robot. If you dropped a nut, you couldn't bend down and pick it up, because the next car was already pressing down on you. If you needed the bathroom, you had to wait for a relief man for hours, dancing in place from pain. The Unimate robots set the rhythm. An iron hand doesn't get tired. It doesn't need to smoke. It just goes whir, clank every 36 seconds. And humans had to adjust to this rhythm. In October 1971, the situation worsened. Plant management was handed over to a new, tough structure, GMAD, General Motors Assembly Division. Inside the company, they were called the Green Berets of management. Their task was to tighten the screws and squeeze maximum efficiency out of the plant. GMAD looked at the reports and decided too many people. They started mass layoffs. They fired hundreds of support workers, quality inspectors, janitors, but the line speed remained the same, 101 cars per hour. The load on those remaining increased. Now a worker had to do not one operation in 36 seconds, but 1.5. Discipline became military. For being a minute late, a fine. For talking on the line, a reprimand. For long hair, dirty looks from foremen. The cheerful Woodstock instantly turned into a concentration camp with rock music. The atmosphere in the shops heated to the limit. The air rang with tension. Part 4. Signals of Change. Lordstown Syndrome. And people began to break. Not physically, young bodies could still withstand the pace. They broke psychologically. Sociologists and psychologists studying this phenomenon coined a special term for it that entered textbooks: Lordstown Syndrome. It was a feeling of deep existential alienation, a feeling of the complete meaninglessness of one's labor. Young guys asked themselves, why am I doing this? I've turned into an appendage to a machine. I am not a human. I am meat served at the robot's table. Unlike their fathers, who endured humiliation to feed their families during hard times, these guys didn't want to endure. They wanted meaning. They wanted respect. And sabotage began. It was a quiet, guerrilla rebellion against the machine. At first, it was little things. Someone forgot to tighten a bolt. Someone accidentally scratched the paint with a screwdriver. But then it became a mass phenomenon. Workers intentionally left handfuls of nuts and bolts inside door panels so they would rattle when driving. They slashed seat upholstery with knives. They stripped threads. They broke ignition keys in the locks. One worker recounted, "I saw a guy just skip 5 cars in a row without installing a single part. He just stood there watching them float by, smiling." Thousands of Chevrolet Vegas rolled off the conveyor defective. Parking lots around the plant were packed with cars requiring repair before shipping to dealers. The quality of the Car of the Year plummeted into the abyss. The Vega began to manifest terrible problems. Bodies started rusting literally after 6 months. The car had no proper rust protection, cost savings. People joked that the Vega started rusting on the brochure. The innovative aluminum engine overheated, warped and started devouring oil by the bucket. Mufflers fell off while driving. GM's reputation as a manufacturer of reliable cars began to melt like snow. But management in Detroit was blind. In their reports, they blamed everything on lazy, dirty hippies, drugs, and lack of discipline. They refused to admit a simple truth. The insane pace of robots is simply incompatible with human nature. You cannot force a human to be a machine. Part 5. The Fall. The Strike of 1972. In March 1972, the boiler exploded. UAW Local 1112 declared a strike. 8,000 workers walked out the gates. The assembly line stopped. The silence that fell in the shops was deafening. This strike lasted 22 days, and it was unique in the history of the U.S. labor movement. Usually, unions strike for money. Give us more dollars per hour and we'll come back. Here, everything was different. Journalists asked strike leaders, "What do you want? Money?" And they answered, "No, we don't need your dirty money. We want to be treated like human beings." It was a strike for the humanization of work, for quality of life. Picketers' signs read, "We are not machines. Stop the line. Give us back our dignity." The Lordstown strike became major national news. Time, Newsweek, Harper's wrote about it. For the first time, America was discussing not economics, but the psychology of labor. Blue collars spoke for the first time about how work should bring not just a check, but satisfaction. The strike cost GM $150 million, almost $1 billion in today's money. Dealers were left without cars. Company stock fell. In the end, GM had to negotiate. They reinstated the fired, softened disciplinary rules. But they kept the main thing. The line speed remained the same. The robots won. GM simply bought peace with money, never understanding the essence of the problem. The Chevrolet Vega went down in history as one of the worst cars of all time. Due to rust and engine problems, GM had to spend millions on warranty repairs. The Vega brand became synonymous with garbage. The model was quietly discontinued in 1977. The Lordstown plant continued to operate. The rebels grew up, got haircuts, got families and mortgages. The rebellion faded. The plant produced the Chevrolet Cavalier, then the Cobalt, then the Cruze. But the soul of the factory was broken in that year of 1972. Relations between people and management remained forever poisoned by the venom of distrust. It was a Cold War that lasted 40 years. Part 6. The Crash. Betrayal, 2019. Fast forward to our time, the 2000s. Lordstown is riding high again. The plant produces the Chevrolet Cruze, an excellent, popular sedan. Build quality is some of the best in GM. Workers were proud of their product. They proved they could work well. The plant was turning a profit. But the market changed again. Americans fell out of love with sedans. Everyone wanted crossovers and pickups. Cruze sales began to fall. In November 2018, 3 days before Thanksgiving, General Motors dropped a bomb. A dry press release announced that the Lordstown plant was moving to unallocated status. It was a corporate murder word. It meant the plant had no product, that it would be closed. For the Mahoning Valley, this sounded like a death sentence. The entire region depended on this plant. Politics intervened, dirty and cynical. Donald Trump, who built his campaign on the promise to return manufacturing to the Rust Belt, came to Ohio. At a rally, looking workers in the eye, he said his famous line, Don't sell your houses. We're going to get it back. The jobs are coming back. It's going to be fine. People believed. They didn't sell their houses. They waited. GM remained silent. Mary Barra, GM's CEO, earning $22 million a year, was just counting numbers. It was more profitable for her to close the Ohio plant and boost production in Mexico. March 6, 2019, the finale. The last white Chevrolet Cruze, decorated with an American flag, slowly floated down the assembly line. Workers cried. Burly men who had worked here for 30 years sobbed, hugging each other. They sang the anthem. They turned off the lights in the shops that had been their second home. 1,500 people lost their jobs in a single day. They were offered a choice: layoff or transfer to other GM plants. But other plants were in Tennessee, Missouri, Texas. People were forced to abandon their houses, which they hadn't sold listening to Trump, pull kids out of schools, say goodbye to elderly parents, and drive off into the unknown. Families fell apart. The town emptied out. And then the farce began. To calm Trump and the public, GM sold the giant plant to the startup Lordstown Motors. At the head of the startup was Steve Burns, a man who promised much. The plant, worth billions, was given away practically for free. GM even gave a loan for its purchase. Lordstown Motors promised to produce the electric Endurance pickup, promised to hire thousands of people. Trump beamed before the cameras again, calling it a great victory. But it was a bubble, a dummy. The startup had no technology, no money, no orders. The pickup prototype burned down on its very first test. In 2023, Lordstown Motors went bankrupt. The great plant, capable of producing 400,000 cars a year, stood nearly empty, hand-building units of cars. Now the building is owned by Taiwan's Foxconn. An Ultium Cells battery plant was built nearby. But this is not the same Lordstown. Wages at the battery plant are half of what they were at GM. The union is weak. Working conditions are hard, chemicals. The middle class that Lordstown created was destroyed. It was replaced by the working poor. Part 7. Conclusion of the story. The story of Lordstown is a multi-layered tragedy from which we must draw 3 lessons. First lesson: automation by itself solves no problems if it ignores human nature. GM tried to replace people with Unimate robots back in the 70s. They thought technology was more important than the human. They got defects, riots, and hatred. 50 years later, they simply closed the plant, replacing people with an efficiency line item in a tax report. Technocrats always forget that people buy cars, and people build cars, for now. And if you spit on people, you lose the business. Second lesson: Lordstown syndrome hasn't gone anywhere. It just mutated. Look at Amazon warehouses today. Workers with wristbands chasing algorithms, peeing in bottles to avoid a fine for downtime. They experienced the same thing as the guys on the Vega assembly line in 1972. The same alienation, the same feeling that you are a cog. Technologies change, but the human desire for dignity remains unchanged. Rebellion against the machine is inevitable, in whatever form it expresses itself. And the third, cruelest lesson: politics. Politicians' promises to bring back factories are lies. Beautiful, sweet lies for voters. Trump promised the plant wouldn't close. Biden promised to create green jobs. In the end, Lordstown workers were left with nothing. Factories may return physically as concrete boxes, but the old pensions, stability, and wages that allowed a simple worker to feel like the king of life, they are never coming back. The era when factory work was a ticket to the middle class ended on March 6, 2019, when the last cruise drove into the darkness, taking with it the American dream of an entire region.